You know the most dangerous words in reading?
One more chapter.
No. This book isn't usually my genre, but
That's how they get you.
that's how they get you.
1, 2, 3, go!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the To Be Read podcast. I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Julie. And first off, we want to say happy Pride. It's June. We love Pride Month around here, and we love all of you. Today, we are doing genre starter packs. So if you're feeling that itch to jump outside your normal and regular genres, we've got some starter books for you.
What's great about swapping genres for a minute is I don't ever really have the itch that's like, I need to go to this other genre. But sometimes I get bored with what I am reading. So it's not necessary. Like when something feels really repetitive, I read a lot of the same books, and then I start blaming oversaturation of the market or whatever. Then I go, am I thinking critically about what I want to read?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's lots of books in all genres that can scratch the itch of whatever you want to read. And so opening yourself up to a new genre isn't necessarily, oh, I want to just see if I'm a sci-fi gal. No, it's like, let's find good books. And no matter what genre they're in, I love it.
And find the things that you love in all the different genres. It's very exciting. I am a genre hopper, so I'm like, ooh, let's build starter packs.
As we were doing the notes for this, I often went back to our season 2, episode 2, which was the reading experience and how to think a little bit more critically about what you like in a book and picking things that are what you like in a book versus if something is viral or online or because someone told you to. While those are all great and fun to kind of get into things, this whole process made me think, oh, well, I really like these books in these genres and they all kind of have the same thing. So it's like what I like to read in a book.
Yeah.
Why it's important for you guys to figure that out by yourselves.
So today we're going to give accessible, not intimidating, and rewarding books that are going to leave you wanting more inside that particular genre. And then we're going to go into why we chose them. Now, the caveat is that these books are not like our favorite books of all time, but we believe they're like the best starter books to get you into the genre.
I just can't get over your voice.
She's husky today. We're a little raspy.
Here's the thing. I have struggled with the subgenres of everything. Like it's sci-fi. You know, like those are very classically like this is on a sci-fi shelf and this is on a fantasy shelf. And there is mix between the two, like romantasy or fantasy romance or
high fantasy.
Yeah, space odysseys and like all this stuff. There's so many subgenres. And there's like a point where I don't care. Like I'm like that
Real
tells
talk,
me
though.
I know that other people do, and that's great. But for me, I just care about the genre.
Yep.
And I don't
Just
care if
the
it's
base
a grimdark
genre. Yeah, the base genre of it all. I've got high fantasy, and fantasy romance. I'm not putting anything else on there for fantasy.
You're not
Okay.
putting cozy fantasy,
Fantasy, urban fantasy, grimdark fantasy.
It's just
It's a whole thing.
push.
But speaking of fantasy, that's the first genre we're going to start in today because Vanessa's our resident fantasy expert. I'm no longer a dabbler. I'm now a fantasy girl. Girl with an O. So we want to talk about that first because, you know, we all make our assumptions about fantasy.
We do. Fantasy, I feel like people give it such a bad name. Like you're a nerd or like, oh,
You
you're
LARP. Which there's nothing wrong with that.
There's
if you do.
I think that fantasy readers like indirect conflict, meaning they don't like to hear about the real world conflict. They like to hear about a make-believe conflict that mirrors real life. They still need plots and they still need swords and, you know, all this fun stuff that goes with fantasy. But I mean, fantasy as a whole usually tends to have a commentary on a political system. I mean, sci-fi could be the same, you know, in there. A lot of books are in different ways, whether it's emotional or actual, like in your face about political maneuverings. A big component of fantasy that you see, maps, glossaries, they're that thick.
Indexes.
Appendices.
Appendices.
What I really, there's two things that I love about fantasies. And one is the map. I love a map. Visual girly, I love a map. One thing that I hate is a bad map. I'd rather have no map than a bad map. So take
Facts.
that with what you will.
Holy balls. I've come across way too many bad maps that I'm just like,
Bad map.
the places that we're going are not even on the map. What is up with that?
I read a book like that the other day. It's like the continent in which you are referring is not on this map. There is a map and glossary fear factor when it comes to fantasy, or just like that the world building is too much.
Or the pacing is slow. I think there's a great payoff that comes from a more meandering story that gets really into the character development, really into the plot. Like, we're really setting up for something epic.
Yeah.
Journey over destination.
The fantasy genre can be just as emotional or funny or romantic or political as any other book. It does have some other components like world building, but much like we said in a prior episode, throwing it back to season 1, character development is the reason we are on our journey in fantasies. So fantasy provides a journey for you to go on, and character development is why we stay interested.
1000%.
So my intro rec that I usually tell people is, and this is actually a new one for me, is Assassin's Apprentice by Rob and Hobb. This is very traditional to what you would envision a fantasy book. It is not any crazy world. It's a very familiar, almost like medieval setting. There's a castle. There's kings and queens and princes and bastards, and there's all sorts of, there's a jester,
The bastards.
so the bastards. Well, the main guy fits chivalry, is a bastard, but it's kind of familiar in the way that like media portrays fantasy, but not to like a Game of Thrones level. Robin Hobb is a great intro to fantasy, like if you're just dabbling in. I think that first book came out in 95, so it's a little bit more dated. It's not tropey. There is a little romance in there, but not much. So it's a great like intro in.
Okay. My first recommendation, my intro to fantasy, is what my intro to fantasy was, which is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. So it's a standalone within his Cosmere. You will see characters from that book pop up in other books. It is part of a greater story, but it is a book that stands on its own, which for me was a great way to be introduced into fantasy. That recommendation came from my husband. It was the first Sanderson I ever read. But in my mind, Sanderson is king of fantasy. So I am just kind of like, let's start there.
What I can appreciate about Sanderson is there's different levels.
Absolutely.
There is base level, there's kind of a medium, and then there's like higher fantasy.
If you start with Way of Kings, please don't. Get there. You'll work up to it. We got to pace ourselves. Okay? But I think Warbreaker is a fantastic intro to fantasy. If we want to go a little more current, maybe even a little bit lighter in some ways, I would say Tress of the Emerald Sea, especially having like a Princess Bride vibe. It might be a little easier to pick up on things, but we're still very fantasy setting, like sea made of spores, like very fantastical and fun.
That book helps you envision a different world.
Yes.
So there's kind of getting grasps of fantasy as we know it and how the media has portrayed it. And then there's kind of evolving. Because if you read fantasy, you know that there's a million different worlds out there that you can live in.
Yeah.
But if you're just getting into it, I suggest staying in a world that is familiar or like adjacent to what we know. Media portrayal.
I think medieval settings are like a good place to start.
Yeah.
I would say Warbreaker is a little more along those lines.
Another one that I really liked was Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. That would probably be my next step, actually. It's a little bit more than like your intro, but it is got more romance to it. It's a little bit more gripping of a story. It's about oppression, and to say the main character is just, oh my gosh, if you want to read about a powerful woman who has just been beaten down by the system and to pick herself up. Oh, it's just so great. But what I really, really like about it is the world building is slightly different than your average. So the reason why I picked that one is because it is like adjacent to a medieval time, however, much more expanded. So it is my next level. So that's where I would suggest to go.
I like that. I think it's interesting that as we were prepping for this episode, we recognized like Vanessa's going to recommend a series first. I'm going to recommend a standalone. And that's just two different perspectives from us as readers. Like,
yeah.
Vanessa's definitely more series driven, in reading, I will lean towards standalone first over a series, though I do enjoy a series.
I can understand starting with one, like if you don't even know if you're a series, because that is
Yeah.
series. I mean, I know other genres have series, but it is not like the fantasy books have series.
They're
Like
girthy.
They're girthy, yes.
Yeah, they're long, they're epic, they're
Sci-fi,
well
sci-fi
involved.
can too. But like I feel like if I'm reading a series in a contemporary romance setting, it's just not the same. Because mainly it's usually just interconnected series or standalones, and that's just no fun for me. I'm not saying that's no fun for anybody. But so yeah, I definitely will suggest a series. And I think the reason being is because if you do like it, then you automatically know what you're going to next.
So what do you recommend going to next?
Well, like the next book.
Oh.
Like
Okay.
book number 2.
Book number 2. Yeah, that fair point.
You know what I mean? Like
I get you now.
if you want
I
to be
wasn't there
told-
yet, but I am now.
What's cool about that is we have analyzed that about ourselves and we know.
Yes.
I don't often recommend series to you anymore.
Yeah, sorry.
For that
Big
reason.
disappointment.
It's not a disappointment. It's just the way, that we
It's just
differ.
yeah. Though, if you read Brando Sando, Tress or Warbreaker, and you're like, where should I go next? I'm going to give you more Brando Sando, and I'm going to give you Mistborn. And that's going to step it up a notch. Pacing's going to slow a little bit. We're going to get more epic. We're going to expand the world. We have a 3-book series that then leads into a 4-book series. And if we don't want to go right into Mistborn, I'm going to hand you Throne of Glass. So I'm going to take you from a standalone and throw you into an 8-book series.
Yeah,
Because I make sense.
totally makes sense. What's kind of unique to fantasies is they are often judged as a series as a whole versus individual books. I thought that was just me. And then I realized, no, the entire fandom of fantasy readers are like, oh, I love Throne of Glass, but was the first book its best? No.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas I feel like other genres, it's like one book to make the impact. Fantasy readers, they tend to rate it as a whole.
And I know some of you might be like, hey, me, Julie, Throne of Glass is Romantasy. And I'm going to argue you on that. Because that book is story and plot driven. There is romance in it, but that's not like the main key part of the story. You going to try and sit here and tell me that Aelin Asher Galathinius is just out here to fall in love? Go argue a wall.
That kind of opens it up to our romantasy section. We didn't want to get too subgenre-y in this episode, but romantasy is
Its own beast.
It is its own beast that is quite large and is quite a new development. There is a lot of argument between fantasy romance and romantic fantasy. According to Victoria Aveyard, the second word is what it is. So if it's a romantic fantasy, that should be on a fantasy shelf. And if it's a fantasy romance, it should be on a romance shelf. So I've been saying it wrong this entire time.
Victoria, I trust you.
If there was
I like
anyone
you
to
a lot.
trust, it would be her.
Our
Oh, I'm
queen.
so excited to read Tempest when it
Me
comes out.
too.
Oh, there is a lot of argument about, plot driven and romance driven and like all these things within the romantasy sphere. And I think you can kind of, neither one is wrong. It's just where you fall. You got to figure that out where you fall. If you like romance driven fantasy or if you like fantasy driven romance, whatever you like. But one of my recs was One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This is where I would recommend to someone who isn't into the romance or is actually one. I love the romance in that book, but it's not the main plot. It's very obviously not the main plot. It's a great book if you want to kind of dabble your toes in romance in fantasy
Yeah.
because the world in it is not overly complex, but it is so intriguing.
The magic system, though.
The card.
I just need to direct you guys if you're going to argue at us about romantasy and how it's ruined fantasy and women are just reading porn. I need you to go find the video of Brandon Sanderson talking about how incredible romantasy is and what it's done for the book world. Okay? In Brando Sando, we trust. All right. I'm not going to sit here and be Captain Obvious and be like, Akatar, because we all know that Akatar is the main gateway drug to get you into fantasy, right?
Yeah.
Romantasy, my bad. I'm gonna bring in a different pick. In the Veins of the Drowning by Kaylee Cassidy is the first book in a duology. One Dark Window is also a duology. The second book of it will be out this summer. I think that's a great place to start. It's not chunky. It's accessible, but it's a really like fantastical world. We've got sirens. We've got magic. and we've got romance. And I loved that book. I was on a Romantasy strike last year until I read that book. And then I was like, this is why it's good. This is why I like it. This is why I've read it this whole time.
Another one that I suggest if you're coming from contemporary romance or a lit fic space is the Remnant Chronicles, because the first book is there's like a love triangle, and the first book is more romance centered, but it, much like Throne of Glass, it builds into this like very big fantasy world. But I would still consider that series romantic fantasy because it is fantasy forward. So the first book has more romance in it, but then it really builds the world as she experiences it because she gets out in the world. But what is really cool about that book, the first book is one of the only books that I've ever read where it has multiple POVs, and I've liked it from the first book. It is a girl and two guys. One is a prince and one is an assassin, but it never says which of the guys is the prince or assassin. And so you're like constantly guessing who it is. It's crazy. So it's written really well, in my opinion.
If we want to go into like Fated Mate area and kind of get into that, I'm going to recommend Runebreaker by Mila Finch. This book is going to be traditionally published in August. I loved that book so much. I read it earlier this year and it was fun. Like it took me back to like how I felt reading ACOTAR for the first time and just like, this is fun. This is fun fantasy. This is fun romance. I'm on board with these characters. That was the main guy that reminded me of Lorcan.
Oh, yeah.
I was totally here for it. If you're going to go somewhere next,
The Poison Daughter is a fun one.
The Poison Daughter's a good one, though it is a little bit more dark romance. I think once you start to dabble,
spicier for sure.
It's spicier, and I think it's considered a dark romance. I think once you get into like voyeurism and things like that, then it's considered just like a little more taboo.
What I liked about that book is there's a lot of emotional depth to it. So even though here we are talking about like sexual things, there's a really high balance to it where like, yeah, there's some of that if that's what you like to kind of have sprinkled in.
And magic.
Awesome world, awesome magic, tension.
Well fleshed out, standalone.
Well-developed characters.
Okay, we've hit our fantasies. We've hit our romantasy. We're going to dive into what I dove into last year and found so much joy out of. And that's sci-fi. Oh, my Shayla. Sci-fi. When you think of sci-fi, you always think about like nerdy science and space and aliens and all those things. It is so much more than that. It is those things, but it is other things as well. My starter book for sci-fi is the book that started me kind of into reading. I remember reading as a kid. I think I've talked about it a lot. Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card would be my entry-level sci-fi book. If you want to go something that's a little more modern, because Ender's Game is definitely on the older side, I'm going to say The Martian or Project Hail Mary, which I know you're going to talk about Project Hail Mary. I think those are going to give you accessible, science-heavy science fiction.
I think those are both great options. I read Ender's Game. Was it in middle school?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a YA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here's the thing about sci-fi. I am not a sci-fi person, but I have been known to dabble.
Yes.
One of my favorite books is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy because it's so well written. I think there is, and I don't know what kind of subgenre that this goes into, but there is like this facet into sci-fi that I think is a great entry point because it is so familiar to not only people of the science fiction world, but it kind of brings a fandom world of something else. It's the video game world, right? So my pick was Ready Player One.
I love that book so
by
much.
Is it Ernest Cline?
Ernest Cline, yeah.
I think that book was pre-Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Yes.
I don't think I put that together until my reread recently, but the whole point is that is something familiar to everyone. So like Dungeon Crawler Carl is very similar in that way where like there's recognizable fandoms and there's recognizable aspects that go beyond just being quote unquote nerdy, and it gives a broader audience to the science fiction world. So that's where I always suggest to start is something like Ready Player One.
Well, now there's a whole subgenre of sci-fi called lit RPG, which is like literary role player game books, which that's where your Dungeon Crawler Carl is going to fall into. But there's a whole other
There's more.
There's
But
a
wait.
gigantic subsection.
I think the whole thing about trying to get someone to start a sci-fi book, though, I mean, I can relate to that because I am not someone who maybe gravitates towards that. But also, I did really like Project Hail Mary, but you had to talk me through that first half of the book. And the reason being is because the first half is so science heavy. I was getting so bored because it was like, where are we going, guys? I felt like the plot didn't pick up. So what I look for in a book is plot pretty much first and forward. And in Project Hail Mary, it didn't really hit until the halfway point, and that's when it took off and I felt really good about it. It is not incredibly hard to figure out either. It's just there was a lot of science and there's a reason, but it did not keep me entertained. Things you really just got to figure out what you like in reading, and there's a book in every genre that fits that. If you like more emotional reads, like if you kind of come from the contemporary romance space, I almost wonder if Red Rising would be good for you because it is more inherently emotional than most other sci-fis I've read.
I think Red Rising is a good sci-fi place to start. I think it's a good way to bring people in. There's just like such a big community of it. It would not be my recommendation necessarily to start there if you're, I don't know. You have to give me like different criteria in order for me to recommend Red Rising as where to start. I would say Ender's Game, and then I would probably hand you Murderbot or something like The Expanse by James Corey. Those are just like really true good sci-fi series. I would also recommend We Are Legion, We Are Bob by Dennis E. Taylor.
One thing I really like about sci-fi books is when I just need to laugh, like I'll look for a sci-fi book that's
levity.
funny.
Yeah, you would love We Are Legion.
Oh, that's on my TV.
And the audio is so good because it's Ray Porter who did Project Hail Mary, and he's so fantastic.
So another rec, and I've already mentioned it, was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
I need to read that one.
It's really witty. Fans of The Office will like it. It's very dry humor. If
People
you're
sure love the opening line to that book.
Too soon. But like kind of a polar opposite genre would be contemporary romance, which
Okay, I'm so excited.
I read a lot of.
Well versed in this genre because this is all I read when my children were little because I didn't have brain space for anything else.
One thing that the interwebs really just needs to figure out is you can ingest just books that don't have a lot of stuff to it. You can ingest something that is light. You can ingest something that is maybe not good, and that's okay.
Oh, I read so many books that were not subjectively good in any way, shape, or form.
And it doesn't make
Typos,
you
formatting errors, plot holes, outline issues, things that made no sense. But you know what? They brought me joy and they brought me comfort.
I learned a lovely lesson last week when I was reading to my daughter. Barnes & Noble book of the month is Every Night is Pizza Night. And I can't remember the author. But the whole premise of this children's book is this little girl really loves pizza. And she wants it every night. But they're like, try these other things. Try bibimbap. Try tagine. Try gumbo. Try these things. And the little girl, is it better than pizza? I don't know. And at the very end, she still likes pizza more. But it's not because it's the best for everyone. It was the best for her. But she also said that some of those other things were her favorite too. Nobody will just eat pizza all day, every day for the end of time. We all need variety, and it doesn't make it any less than. Like, I'm not less than for enjoying pizza. I'm not less than for reading contemporary romance. There is a point why a reader is reading that because they like to read it, and it doesn't make them any less intelligent. It doesn't make them cringy for reading romance or smut or whatever. Just let people like what they like. Just let them like what they like.
Yeah. Seriously.
My tangent of the night.
No, just do. Like, there's no reason to be like, but why are you only reading that? Okay, you don't know what's going on in their head. You don't know what their daily life looks like. And guess what? They're still reading words on a page.
Why are we knocking
Fantastic.
the reading experience?
Seriously. Let people read. Damn it.
A big reason why I didn't love Project Hail Mary, and I told you this, is because the first half was so science forward. I do that at work. I read technical papers at work all the time, which some would argue would make me fairly smart. Fairly might be the objective phrase. You know what I mean? But if you need to know about SMR nuclear reactors. I know a
She's
decent
your
amount.
girl.
But the whole point is like when I get home and I want to relax and unwind, that's not what I want to go to, because that is something that is what I have done every day. So
Every day.
I know I know engineers and like physicists and chemists and things like that who are all in a book club and they read smut. Like let's just not police why people are reading.
And I think it's so interesting what you can find in a romance book. I mean, some of the topics that you're going to tackle. I read such an incredible book about loneliness, and it was a romance novel.
What was it?
People Who Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry tackles the aspects of loneliness and being the odd man out in such a beautiful way. To be seen by someone who loves you when you've always been on the outside, or you've always kind of been like the odd man. And I've read 2 fantastic books in the last 2 months that have represented OCD in such a powerful and poignant way. Both of them were romance books. Unbound by Peyton Curran and Phoebe Berman's Gonna Lose It by Brooke Averick. Like, I have never seen myself represented in a book as well and as clearly as I did in both of those. And they are romance books.
There are fluffy romance books. I'm going to be honest. There's a lot of cowboy romances that tend to be very fluffy.
They are fun.
They are.
Let me have a good time. It's like watching a show.
My recommendation for contemporary romance books is not vast. I will be the first to say it, because I actually inherently hate the genre.
She's like, don't talk shit on it, but I don't love it.
But here's the thing, like, it's because of why I like to read. Very plot forward.
She likes to escape.
I like to escape. Contemporary romance is a little too real for me.
Doesn't want to be on Earth.
I have read a couple in the last couple years that had enough like substance that I was like, yeah. And I will read those like occasionally, like as palate cleansers, like in between fantasies or something like that. Just throw something in, like a little something else.
Yeah.
There's some hits and some misses, but you're gonna find this so funny, because of all the craze that is happening right now. The Deal by Elle Kennedy.
Guys, the off-campus, it's alive and well in here in my soul. That's also part of what happened at the beginning of June. I was just like, off campus. I guess that was May, but still.
I think every woman over a certain age definitely was like, off campus.
Off campus.
Off campus. I actually waited a little bit to watch the show. I actually love a good hockey romance. I think sports romances are a good gateway for me, but okay, I liked The Deal because I had just come off of a book that had just a terrible MMC and FMC. Like, honestly, like, I just wanted to sucker punch them both.
What book was that?
Fury Bound. And I was really annoyed. And so I was like, well, let me just like read something else to cure my annoyance. And then I read The Deal, and I don't feel like the show did it justice in the way of like, these are 2 very mature adults.
Very mature.
We didn't have a miscommunication trope, or we didn't have like, oh, but did he really see me? I don't know. Like, some of this just juvenile shit. We didn't have that.
Yeah.
There was some heavier themes that, I mean, if you've seen the show, you know. The book handled those heavier themes a little bit more so than the TV show, but the TV show is still good as a TV show is going to get, right? Yeah. But I really liked that so much that I actually read
The Mistake.
The Mistake. I don't necessarily suggest going on with that series if it's not your thing. If it is your thing, keep going. But it wasn't my thing. But I really liked The Deal. And then Book Lovers by Emily Henry.
I think Emily Henry is a fantastic place to start. I have a deep love for Emily Henry. When I think about romance genre, I came from a background of like closed door romance only. So now that I am an open door romance girl, I'm going to give you recs for both because it's just personal taste. It's just what you like. If you want good closed door with tension, but you kind of maybe want to see what you can build up to with a threshold of getting into some open door romance, I'm going to recommend the One in Rome series written by Sarah Adams, who's another one of our fantastic Kindle Unlimited authors. That's where she got her start. They're great. They kind of work up in spice. So there's no open door. in 1 and 2. I think there's Open Door in 3 and 4. So I think that's a great place to start. I would also recommend The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. I think Catherine Center is a very tasteful and wonderful place to start. Her books make me happy. She writes good tension, good storylines. I really like Catherine Center. If you want to just kind of jump right into spice, I think The Deal's a great place to start. You're going to get good spice and you're going to get good story with good characters. I would say Liz Tom Ford is my next place to go with the Windy City series. I personally believe you can skip book 1. It's a little weird, but the rest of the books are super fantastic and I love those. I also have a few Allie Hazelwoods that I love. I really enjoyed Deep End and I really liked Problematic Summer Romance. So you can get there's some options. I just love romance so much. I've been in a romance phase lately because we've had just like a lot going on in life. And when that happens, I just don't have as much brain capacity. And I just need something that's a little more fast paced.
Where to go next in my list is a throwback here. Listen, I don't read a lot of romances because if I want a romance, I'll go to Romantasy. Is Dear John by Nicholas Sparks.
I read that book in a day when I was like, I want to say 16, and I sobbed.
Yeah. Oh, emotional trauma.
The coin collection.
The dad?
The dad in the coin collection. Don't even get me started. I read it on an airplane home from Washington, D.C. when I was like 16 years old. And oh my gosh.
I really liked that book because there was more going on than just the romance, even though the romance was, a huge part of it. Yeah. I don't even remember if it's spicy or not. I don't think it really was.
Yeah.
Not like the books that we read.
Not like what we're reading now.
So that would be if you want something a little bit more tame, or if you're like really wanting like a super closed door situation. This is what I read in high school a lot was Marcia Lynn McClure books. They were so easy to read in like a day. Listen, there's one you need to.
I know.
There's one you need to read.
I know.
It's called Dusty Britches.
Dusty Britches. We've talked about Dusty Britches.
It's for the Nesta lovers.
Okay. All right.
So the next genre in our Gab Fest is literary fiction and historical fiction, which I really was excited that we were talking about because I don't read those often, but when I do, I love them.
I hate historical fiction.
I love historical fiction. I don't tend to like lit fics because there's not enough going on. So
with your lit fics, you're going to find books that are very character driven. They're not as plot heavy. You're really looking at the development of a character and what's going on in their lives.
It's like for people who are more interested in the human experience.
Yeah, they're very like
plot.
They're very grounded in humanity. They feel very real. My entry level, I've got 3. I just thought of another one. Sorry. I do dabble in lit fic every once in a while. So I have a couple favorites. Horse by Geraldine Brooks, which is going to be a mix of a historical fiction. We are going to have a dual timeline of Civil War and present day. I think it tackles some important topics and themes. It's very accessible, easy to understand. It's not like way out there, woohoo. And Hello Beautiful by Anne Napolitano is a retelling of Little Woman, which is fantastic. And my last one would be Tom Lake by Anne Patchett. She writes a good lit fic, and that was a good one. I really enjoyed that one. Story of a Family.
Very nice. My Rex would be Lessons in Chemistry.
It's a god tier book for me.
By Bonnie Garmis.
Yep.
I had no idea it was a TV show until after.
It's well done too.
It's a great historical fiction, although it doesn't really feel like a historical fiction.
I mean, it's kind of more like a timepiece, I guess.
Yeah, but it talks a lot about women in STEM and also prejudice and sexism in the workplace in the 60s.
Yeah. Oh, I love that book so much. When I read it, I cried on a camping trip with my family.
I'm noticing a pattern.
Crying?
I was going to say camping trips, but
I do camp often-ish.
My other recommendation is The Lost Bookshop by Evie Woods. It's lighthearted. It is also a dual timeline. So there's the current timeline and then there's an older one, but it is based in Dublin. And I find the history there really fascinating. So I like historical fiction just because I like to try and learn as I read. Not to say like it's all accurate. You have to make sure you're double checking some of those facts. But That one has like a sprinkle of fantasy. There's like a little bit of a fantastical element because this bookshop pops up in different timelines.
I just thought of another one. Do I need to redact my statement that I hate historical fiction? Okay. Here's what I need to say. I don't mind a historical fiction. I don't want to go towards it. I think that World War II historical fiction is incredibly overdone, and I'm over it. Granted, the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society.
I love that book.
Is a great. I think it's a great historical fiction. It's also epistolary, so it's written all in letters.
Oh,
Did I just Google that? Yes, but I knew it had a name, so I get some points for that. Yeah, it's wartime, but it's wartime in a perspective in a place that you don't really know that much about.
Yeah.
That's the kind of historical fiction that I want to read about. The things that I don't really know. I would just rather read about things I don't know as much about. I think that's why I loved The Women by Kristen Hanna so much, because we're in Vietnam and I don't know that much about Vietnam.
Oh.
But if those are the entry books, my next book I'm going to recommend to you is James by Percival Everett. It's a retelling of Huckleberry Finn from James' perspective. I also think Percival Everett is an author that we all need to be reading. He writes fantastic works. I've also read The Trees by Percival Everett, which is very interesting.
I really liked The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I know you did not.
I hate that book.
But
okay.
Also, I think that was the first queer book I read.
I just need this to be abundantly clear. It is not the queer storyline that I did not like in The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I loved that.
What I really liked about that book is it gave a faulty character, and that was probably one of my first times reading a character she wasn't a great person.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
You know what I mean? But if she was, it wouldn't have ended that way, you know? And it kind of talks about her evolving into what she was at the end. And I really can enjoy the human experience that brought on.
Yeah.
In a way, she was trying to survive her own queerness.
If I were to read a queer novel by Taylor Jenkins Reid, I'd read The Atmosphere.
Is that a queer one? I didn't know that.
It is.
Oh.
Yeah. Let's jump into the genre that neither of us, I touch horror. I like horror. We hate thrillers. The two of us combined, we are not your thriller girlies. We're not here to read thrillers. I'm not here to add more anxiety to my life that's already riddled with so much anxiety.
I was going to say, we're too medicated to
we are too unwell to be reading thrillers on the regular. That being said, I do dabble in horror because I find certain aspects of horror as great ways to tell stories. This is another genre in which I have found great OCD representation because guess what? OCD is horrific and makes for a great horror story.
So horror, the difference really between a horror and a thriller is a horror is designed to scare and disturb and unsettle the reader, often using fear of the unknown or monsters or the supernatural. Thrillers are more focused on suspense, danger, and momentum, usually making the reader ask, what's going to happen next or can they survive this? So there's a different feeling, I think, for a horror versus a thriller. And I don't like horrors. For that reason, because I don't like the feeling. I don't love being in the thriller, but what I have found in the thriller category that I really like are like the whodunits, like Agatha Christie. Honestly, any Agatha Christie book.
Live, laugh, love Agatha Christie.
I love her writing. Murder on the Orient Express is great, but I would say the one to start out with, because I think it's a 4-hour listen on Audible, is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. And I think that would just be if you're not into it and you're trying to get into it, or you want to just kind of see if it's for you, that's a great one. But I like Agatha Christie because it tells a story versus makes you feel that anxious, I can't go to bed, or that heart tightening, when you go up a hill kind of feeling. Yeah. I don't feel like that when I'm reading Agatha Christie.
My entry-level book in horror, which I would also, again, check your triggers, is it gets a little disturbing by the end, is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I read that book probably 4 years ago, and I remember exactly where I was when I finished it and just what just happened? I was freaking out. And then as I just sat with it for a couple of years, I was I freaking love that book and I want to reread it. My next steps, and I might even put these as entry levels as well. I would put C.G. Drews as a good entry level. They write Don't Let the Forest In and Hazelthorn. C.G. Drews also adds in like fantastic themes of like mental health representation, very purple prose, very lyrical, very descriptive, very like cottagecore moldy vibes. I feel damp.
Moldy.
I feel damp and like I have mushrooms growing on my arms when
I read Don't Let the Forest In and I remember feeling that. Very great writing.
The writing's stunning.
If you're into horror, yeah, that would be a good one.
Also great queer representation once
great,
again.
yeah.
But I also recommended it to my sister and she read Don't Let the Forest In and she told me that it was like creepy, of course. But she said, I've never been able to quite grasp or understand what anxiety feels like for people until I read that book.
Yeah.
It's visceral. It's just like you
can feel it. They are.
The descriptions are so good. Right.
And actually, if you're into fantasy and you're wanting to go into horror, I actually suggest Anathema by Carrie Lake. That was even a little too much horror for me. I really liked it, but it had enough of the other things that I enjoy out of fantasy that it helped ground me a little bit. But that's a really good one if you're coming from fantasy.
Okay, we've got 2 genres left.
Okay, so the next one is classic. So listen. Classics. Let's talk about it for a second. Each classic kind of has different levels of language barriers and
length
and things like that. And I think a lot of trauma comes from us being forced to read it.
But as I've read classics, I'm like, there's a reason this is a classic. Like, these books stand the test of time for a reason.
One of my all-time favorite books is a classic, and it's The Scarlet Pimpernel by Baroness Orczy. I don't know how you say it. I mean, I have like a really fond memory of reading that with my dad, but it also got turned into a Broadway musical. And I think that's what led me to read it, is because I really liked the musical.
Yeah.
So, gateways and all. It's such a good action adventure, but that isn't incredibly hard to understand. Like, it's like Les Mis in the way of like there is a lot going on. There's like war happening. There's like the French Revolution and like there's monarchs and like there's just like a lot going on politically. It had like a little bit of everything for me. So I really like The Scarlet Pimpernel, and it wasn't too long either.
It is a good length. I think that's something that you have to keep in mind when you're going to come into classics, is that you're going to be met with some really beefy books. But there are a lot that are shorter that are a great gateway. That's why my recommendation is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. 1, because it's one of my favorite books that I've ever read in my whole entire life. But 2, it's also shorter, which I think is a great place to start. I would also recommend Pride and Prejudice, but I think that's some bias on my part because I think that book is spectacular. And I own like 3 or 4 editions of it because if I find a cool one at the used bookstore, I always buy it.
I will say I definitely like Jane Austen more than contemporary romance. So if I ever want a romance, maybe I should go back.
And Jane Austen is funny. I need people to recognize that she's hilarious. All right, that's about our classics. That's about what we can do classic wise.
Yeah.
I can't sit here and be like, I read so many classics. All right, let's do our last one, which is another one that I'm really excited about. Young adult. All right, I think YA is often written off because it's for kids. But YA tackles some of the heaviest topics I've ever read in literature. Ever. And it's worth our time. Also, there's the broad spectrum because you have YA fantasy, YA sci-fi, YA dystopian, YA contemporary. There's so many places to start.
I mean, a good story doesn't expire because you aged out of a Target shelf, Like, you can still go back and read some of those.
I still find myself lurking there sometimes.
One of my favorites I usually recommend to people is 6 of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. That series, 6 of Crows, is a little Ocean's 11-y.
Yeah, heist.
And that was the first time that I had read that in fantasy. And that was fun. And the different POVs and everything. But the world was really intricate and it was quite different than like a world we know, but it still is written in a way that is easy to understand. So if you're just getting into a YA and you kind of like fantasy or you're coming from fantasy, I definitely recommend the 6 of Crows series or Scythe by Neil Shusterman. But I think fantasy's got some really great YA options for sure.
I always lean more towards the contemporary. That's where I spent a lot of my time as a youth reading angsty emotional stories. So I'm going to dive in with Sarah Dessen, who I love with my whole soul, starting with either My favorite is The Truth About Forever, but I think Saint Anything is probably one of her best. John Green falls into YA, another great place to start. He's a fantastic writer. If you want to get a little more adventurous, I'd like to thank my nephew for this one. The Prisoner of Cell 25 by Richard Paul Evans, which is a series about a kid with magic and probably one of the most evil antagonists I've ever read.
Where I would go next is The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni, if you're into fantasy. It kind of reads a little bit romantasy-esque. It is considered YA, but again, just not an overly complex fantasy world. I feel like YA is a great intro into whatever genre you're getting into, like intro into fantasy. Pick up a YA one. If you're intro into sci-fi, pick up a YA one, because that often are like they're easier to understand. Okay, my challenge to our listeners, our watchers, whatever platform you are viewing this on, is tell us about a time that something in a different genre surprised you. I want to know what was the exception to whatever genre that you don't gravitate towards. You don't like horror? What was the book that made you like horror, or that made you at least like that book? If you don't like historical fiction, what was the book that changed your mind on the genre?
The exception to the rule. The rule that you made up in your head. I think it's fun to break out of a genre. It's fun to hop around. It's fun to see what else is out there and just experience something in a different set. I did that with sci-fi last summer, and I'll never regret it. I love sci-fi now because of that.
So if you want a full list of the books that we talked about, we'll have those in the show notes. So if you're looking at this via TikTok or social media, go check out our YouTube or our Spotify or Apple Podcast. And we have full notes there.
Go read, and read some more, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.